historical, sort of cultural value that may or may not have been intended for, people are trying to make a movie that's going to play in a drive-in for, a few months.
I was geeking on looking at downtown. It's like, God, I forgot, and how cool and how wide open and loose it was. And, that was the best part of it for me. It was like a trip back. And working on the Doug Somm film doc, there is very little film documenting any of this. There is no film of Soap Creek Saloon, which was a wild scene, except this.
Wow.
And so I'm glad it's there.
And in Hell of a Note also. Yeah.
But there is, trying to find Doug Somm film footage. Everybody wants to talk about Doug Somm at Soap Creek and how magical it was. There's no film. No one was doing film. And video had just been starting. I remember getting trained for ACTV at the Armadillo, I think in 73 or 74. And it was really primitive, but by the end of the 70s, everybody's starting to do video and documenting this.
Sure. And I think that's the key, is that these movies were able to capture pieces of Austin that aren't anywhere else. And when you start to watch, a couple hundred of them that have been filmed since, the late 60s to today, you see, they're documenting the changes of time that you can't find in, the great archives that are available or whatever. Those, and it's certainly not the quality that these people were shooting at,
And I think I want to talk to somebody who was handling all of that film. Now, you were working as assistant editor, and one of the funny things for all of us who know Austin is, someone drives out of an alley by 6th Street, and they pull out, and there they are, going down the bridge or something like that. So you were assistant editing on this, and where were you working when you were putting that film together?
I just want to say one thing about just my perspective on Austin at that time, before I tell you about that. I moved here from Los Angeles in 1976, just shortly before I worked on the film. And I was a newcomer to Texas and to Austin. And I met my husband right after I moved here. And Austin was so alive. And I was like, oh my God, I want to live here the rest of my life. People loved where they lived. And it was so different from anything I had ever experienced, because it was absolutely vibrant, alive. There was music everywhere, and this progressive country, this kind of music that I'd never heard before, was everywhere. And my husband and I, we were madly falling in love, and we would go to Soap Creek and drink Lone Star till we couldn't even see straight, and then get in our car, and you could drive around drinking beer, but you couldn't drive drunk. So it was just an incredibly magical time in Austin, and I never wanted to leave, and I did eventually go to LA and landed back in Austin permanently in 1991, and it was a different world then, but I'm glad I was here and experienced it then. So where we did the editing is one of the same places where, well, it is the same place where we cut Dazed and Confused and Suburbia and some of the early Linklater films. And it was this little tiny post-production house behind Capitol Plaza, where the Target is now on
right over here.
I-35 and 51st Street, basically. That used to be a Montgomery Ward, where Target is. And behind the Montgomery Ward was this tiny little strip. There was a Pizza Hut there, and there was a tiny little strip there, and there were guys that worked on cars. And then there was this post-production house that had a projection room where we could screen dailies, lots of chairs. They had a double system projector system, moviolas, which were the old editing machines, flatbed chems, and every student film that needed editing facilities that from kids at UT would go to this guy who owned it, Ivan Bigley, I think there should be a statue of him somewhere in Austin because he really facilitated films getting finished in Austin. And he would, he didn't charge anybody anything. But anyway, that's where we did Outlaw Blues, and I got this call to come to work on the film with this editor, Danny Green, who, like Lars said, he cut MASH, he cut Blazing Saddles, and he was just this cherub-faced little guy who wanted to drink and have a good time, and we took
Came to the
him
right
out.
place.
Yeah, it was great. We spent one entire day looking for a cowboy hat for him. We didn't even work. We just were shopping for hats. It was a great time in Austin.
Now,